to think that they had let him go after all the fighting I've been doing to keep him in. If this happened to one of those people on the parole board, would they even think about releasing him? Would he even still be alive to be released? So why? Because there's other people as well in the prisons. I know they might have killed somebody, but not in the state that he done my children in. And they haven't been put up for parole. So why is he?
Good morning everyone, how you doing? It's Paul here from Unusual Things. Now today you find me in a very rainy Worcester crematorium and cemetery near the Midlands, and we've got one today for the crime files. Now when we think of Friday the 13th, we instantly think of the horror film with Jason Voorhees and his machete going around killing people. But for one family in particular, Friday the 13th and April 1973 was a completely different matter. Today we will hear about David McGreavy and how he became friends with the Ralph family, but then went on Friday the 13th to end up not only murdering the children, but doing something quite vile. And I must warn you that today's video will contain things of a sensitive nature, so if you are of course easily offended or don't want to hear about some of the details, then maybe now would be a good time to not watch. But we're here about how David McGreavy made friends with the family and then went on to commit the ultimate crime and sin towards them. Now of course if you like the video today, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so, maybe subscribe to the channel. As I said, this is one for our true crime files, and we're now here about what led to the disgusting murder of the Ralph children, Paul, Dawn and Samantha. If we can, we'll try and visit the location as well today, the house from which these atrocities took place. And even though the final resting place of the children doesn't have a headstone, there is a plaque in another location which we will go and pay our respects to them as well. So let's get on and find out a bit more about David McGreavy and what led up to him committing those awful crimes on Friday the 13th, 1973. David Anthony McGreavy, born 1951, also known as the Monster of Worcester or the real Friday the 13th killer, is an English convicted triple murderer who killed and dismembered his friend's 3 children in 1973. David Anthony McGreavy was born in 1951 in Southport, Lancashire, to Thomas and Bella McGreavy, the second of 6 children. His father, Thomas, was a sergeant in the British Army, and the family moved frequently between different army posts. In 1967, David McGreavy left school and joined the Royal Navy, where he hoped to make a career. However, he was dismissed from the Navy in August 1971, after being court-martialed for starting a fire that destroyed a mess wardroom. McGreevy then moved back in with his parents in Worcestershire. His fiancée broke up with him and he was sacked from several jobs. Fed up with his lack of work and heavy drinking, his parents forced him to move out. In 1972, unable to live with his parents, McGreevy began boarding with his friend Clive Kenneth Ralph and his wife Dorothy Elsie nee Clay, and with their 2 small children, Paul Kenneth, born the 20th of November 1968, and Dawn Maria, born the 25th of April 1971. Clive and Elsie had been school friends, and there was a 5-year age difference between them. They had married in September 1968 when Elsie was 16 and pregnant with Paul. They lived on Gillam Street in the Rainbow Hill district of Worcester. At the time McGreevy moved in, Elsie was pregnant with Ralph's third child, Samantha Jane, who was born on the 14th of July 1972. Elsie Ralph, who later remarried and has gone by the names of Elsie Uri and Dorothy Uri, recalled in a television interview many years later that McGreevy held a factory job. He paid £6 per week for rent, as well as sometimes cooking Sunday dinner. Although newspapers reported in 1973 that McGreevy and Elsie had an affair, Elsie denied this. Clive Ralph worked for his father as a lorry driver. When baby Samantha was about 7 months old, Elsie became a barmaid at the Punch Bowl pub on Ronkswood Estate in Worcester, about 2 miles from the Ralph home. With both Clive and Elsie now busy working, McGreevy acted as a babysitter for the Ralph children. At that time, McGreevy's family and neighbours, as well as the Ralphs, knew him as a person who loved children, including the Ralph children. According to Elsie, he would frequently play with her children and acted like a father to them, going so far as to chastise her over discipline of Paul. On Friday the 13th of April 1973, Elsie Ralph was picked up from work by Clive, who had left home late. With the 3 children all asleep, Clive would usually pick her up late in order to help her with closing and to have a last pint. When the Ralphs arrived home, the police were already there and escorted them to the police station, where they were told of the sad news. McGreevy, who was known to be a habitual drinker with a violent temper, when inebriated, had gone to the nearby Vauxhall pub on Aswood Road, now the Balti Mile Curry House. He went there earlier in the evening with a friend, and he drank between 5 to 7 pints. The 2 men had played darts and cards, though a small altercation took place prior to leaving the pub, after McGreevy had put a cigarette out in his friend's beer. Clive had picked McGreevy up from the Vauxhall pub and brought him home to look after the children, while Clive went to get Elsie from work.
Okay, so I'm now standing outside the Balti house, which used to be the Vauxhall pub. And this is where McGreevy was drinking all day before he walked back to number 8 Gillam Street. It's now a curry house. Indian restaurant takeaway. Apparently it's really nice in there as well. Now I must say a massive thank you to Gary today, who's helped me out. He doesn't want to be on camera, which is fine, it's fair enough, but a massive thank you, Gary. Really do appreciate your time and effort helping me out today. So there we have it, Vauxhall pub, the Balti.
Now I'm heading down Gillam Street, and at some time between 10:15 and 11:15 on Friday the 13th of April 1973, McGreevy got angered by Samantha, the young 8-month-old baby, screaming. He then decided to take his anger out on the children. 8-month-old Samantha died from a fractured skull. 2-year-old Dawn died from having her throat slit. And 4-year-old Paul died from strangulation. He then went downstairs to the basement, got a pickaxe and mutilated their bodies. He then took them outside to the garden and hung them on his neighbour's fence.
When the Ralphs come home, the police immediately took them straight down to the police station to tell them the news of what happened that night.
McGreevy was arrested by police at 3:50 a.m. walking down Lansdowne Road near the Ralphs' home. Upon his arrest, McGreevy reportedly said, "What's this all about?" At first, McGreevy denied any responsibility, but several hours later said it was me, but it wasn't me, after which he described in graphic detail what he had done. He told police, "I put my hand over Samantha's mouth and it went from there. It's all in the house. On Paul, I used the wire. I was going to bury him, but I couldn't. I went outside and I put them on the fence. All I could hear is kids, kids, kids." McGreevy's only explanation for the murders was that the baby would not stop crying. On the 28th of June 1973, McGreevy appeared in court and pleaded guilty to the murders of all 3 Ralph children. The hearing lasted only 8 minutes before McGreevy pleaded guilty, and there was no defence plea, no motive and no case of diminished responsibility. McGreevy was sentenced to multiple life terms with minimums of 20 years. In prison, he was subjected to frequent abuse by other prisoners and spent most of his 45 years behind bars in protected conditions. He was reported to have successfully adjusted, accepted rehabilitation and engaged in painting. Due to the brutality of the crime, McGreevy became known as the Monster of Worcester. He was the subject of substantial press coverage at the time of the crime. Former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew, was a reporter at the time and had covered the story. Connew has said that although people remembered the crime, the name of David McGreavy was not well remembered because of the lack of a lengthy court proceeding with the accompanying coverage. In 2006, McGreevy again became headline news after he was transferred to an open prison and allowed to stay in a bail hostel in Liverpool. The Sun newspaper discovered and publicised this arrangement, featuring a front page photo of McGreevy, released on temporary licence, walking on a Liverpool street, which resulted in McGreevy's transfer back to a closed prison. In 2009, an anonymity order was issued by the High Court Justice during McGreevy's parole board proceedings. The order was resisted by the British Press and the Press Association, supported by the Secretary of State for Justice, who argued that setting such a precedent would prevent coverage of dangerous criminals. The order was lifted on the 21st of May 2013 by Lord Justice Pitchford of the Court of Appeal of England and Wales and Mr Justice Simon of the High Court of Justice. Based on the importance of the public interest in possible release of a dangerous criminal and lack of imminent danger to McGreevy, the lifting of the anonymity order brought a fresh round of publicity to the 40-year-old case. In December 2018, following a parole hearing, the report said he had changed considerably over the past 45 years and legally cleared for him to be released on parole.
So there's all the information there regarding what happened to the young children, Paul, Dawn and Samantha. Now, like I said, the children aren't actually buried here, but there is a name plaque which I found already. I've put the flowers down because I had my brolly in my hand, the camera, and I didn't want to be walking around with them as well, as it got a little bit too much. So we'll head over to now where the plaque is and I'll show it to you. So here we are. This is where all these sort of like cremation plaques are and so forth. And there's the flowers that we've put down from all of us. And it says, "In love and memory, Paul, Dawn and Samantha Ralph, died 13th of April 1973. Always in my heart. Love, Mummy." So there we have the plaque there for Paul, Dawn and Samantha Ralph. Got to say a massive bless you to all 3 of them. Like I say, they're buried in the churchyard, but there's no headstone or anything for them. And there's the flowers there from all of us. Bless them, bless them, bless them. What a terrible story there. The Friday the 13th killings, the Worcester monster, you know, whatever, however you dress it up, it doesn't matter, does it? 3 young kids innocently taken, slaughtered and hung on railings. I mean, what's that about? You know, it's bad enough to commit that crime, but then to add the ultimate insult to their bodies. And it's almost like an exhibition, so people got to see it, isn't it? It's almost like, there's my statement. You know, a drunken man who says he was driven to it by children because the young baby wanted her bottle and was screaming, and they were in his care, an adult, while his parents, one worked and the other one went to collect her from work, and then to come home. And you just can't fathom it, and you can't imagine what that poor family have gone through. And to this day, you know, with him being released, and rightly so, with the anonymity order being lifted as well, so people know who and where he is. Anyway, from a very sad, wet, dreary Worcester, from the Crime Files. Thank you as always for watching. I'll see you all on the next one. Take it easy.